from the Sports Hub Games Network. This is Fantasy Football Almost Daily.
Hey everybody, welcome to Fantasy Friday here on Fantasy Football Almost Daily. It's the semifinals, so it's time for my co-hosts to pull out the best advice they have left. Because of this, we kicked Anthony Maggio to the curb, suspended for 1 week. We bring out the big guns. Kent Weyrauch is back. He's ready to help you win. Hey, Kent.
Hey, how we doing?
I'm doing great. I'm happy to have you this week. Trevor Jones is here as well, and he was a big fan of his namesake Trevor Lawrence last week. I wasn't. I gave him a bench grade. Oops.
Yeah, the Trevor Brotherhood paid off with his best game of all time. So,
Trevor, you got it right. You're back again. So there's 15 more games to get to this week. So let's not delay too much. I'll remind everybody that we'll give you 9 players on whom you can roll the dice. We'll see if you can, you two can crack my 2 tough nuts. And at the very end of the show, lightning round. Have we helped you this year? I hope we have. If you have been helped by us, help me help you by showing your support with a follow and a subscription, and give us a great rating or review on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, YouTube, whatever you're watching or listening to us on. All right, let's get right into the matchups, and we'll kick off with Trevor this week. You got the Eagles Commanders game. That's a Saturday afternoon kickoff, Trevor. And the Commanders defense has fallen apart recently. Is this as simple as fire up all your Eagles?
It's pretty close, yeah. Jalen Hurts will start. We'll give him a gold. He bounced back from his ugly 4-interception game to throw for 3 touchdowns against Vegas last week. This week, like you said, he faces that atrocious Washington defense, bottom 5 in pass touchdowns and passing yards allowed. And recently was lit up for 3 touchdowns by J.J. McCarthy and 300 combo yards and 2 touchdowns to Jackson Dart. A.J. Brown, he gets a gold as well. He did have 2 targets last week. That was mostly because Jalen Hurts only threw 15 times because Vegas mustered like 10 yards. Before that, though, Brown had seen double-digit targets in 4 straight. He'd also recorded 100 yards or a touchdown in 5 straight. And the Commanders allowed the 8th most yards to the position. Devontae Smith is the one guy I'm not super excited about. I'm giving him a bronze. Brown's recent surge has come at the expense of Devontae, who's cleared 15 PPR points just once since week 7. It is a good matchup, and he's a really talented guy, so he still gets a starting grade, but I am wary in this matchup. Saquon Barkley, he gets a gold. He's coming off back-to-back games with 20-plus touches and a touchdown. Now gets a prime matchup with a Washington run defense that's allowing 145 combo yards per game to enemy backs, which is the 3rd worst in the league. Since week 4, opposing rushing attacks have cleared 140 yards in all but 2 games against Washington. So Saquon's a gold, and then Dallas Goedert will round out with a silver. The tight ends posted at least 6 catches and 70 yards now in back-to-back games. This Commanders tight end defense is giving up the 6th most yards and the 5th most tight ends to the position, so it's a great matchup. Since the week 12 bye, Washington's allowed these performances: 9 for 126 to Denver's tight ends, 5 for 36 and 3 to Minnesota's group, and then played better-ish last week. The Giants tight ends only combined for 6 for 107. So it's a good spot for Dallas Goedert. On the other side, it's pretty light. Mariota is on the bench. Philly's only permitted 13 touchdown passes all year, 2nd best in the league. Also just 279 passing yards allowed in their last 3 games combined. The running backs, it's JCM, Chris Rodriguez, and Jeremy McNichols in a 3-man timeshare again. Rodriguez is expected back from injury. And then also Deebo Samuel steals a couple carries, so we're not interested there. Terry McLaurin does remain in play with the bronze. He's got a touchdown. He's got a touchdown to 2 of his 3 games back from injury. And he's also scored in top 50 yards at each of his last 2 performances against Philly. And we'll give Deebo Browns as well, a bench grade. Philly struggled with number 2 receivers this year, allowing multiple 9-catch, 100-yard performances to the position. However, in the last 3 games, Philly's defense has only allowed 2 receivers to clear 20 receiving yards. The Eagles have given up just 6 touchdowns to wideouts all year. Deebo's only got 12 catches himself in the last 3 games since McLaurin's return, so he's on the bench. And the tight end, Jake Bates and Sinod or somebody. Philly allows the fewest tight end yards in the league. We're not playing those guys.
No, that would be silly. All right, moving on to the next matchup. Kent, Kansas City heads to Tennessee without Patrick Mahomes, maybe without Rashee Rice, but the matchup is extra juicy, Kent. What are you doing with these Chiefs?
Yeah, it's scary. I think I still want to give the bench grade to Gardner Minshew. 0 top 12 finishes last year. Now, granted, that was with the Raiders, so an unfortunate situation for him. But even the year before with the Colts, just three top 12 finishes in 16 games played. I'm not really interested in that in my semifinals. I'll find some other better streaming option than him. If we're looking at, Rashee Rice, he's a maybe right now, but if he does play, I'll give him a silver. He's got a 32% target share in the last month. He's been targeted 9 times in the red zone during that stretch.
9 times.
Thank you.
Nice.
Despite just one red zone touchdown. So he's still got some upside opportunity there in the pay dirt. He's had a very low average depth to target, though, at just 4 yards per target. So it's been kind of an interesting usage for him, but he's getting peppered a lot. And I think that should continue even with Minshew. He would be gold if Mahomes was playing, but obviously I'm not going to push him up to that right now. So on the other hand, Travis Kelce, I will give a silver grade to. After Mahomes went out of the last game, 3 of Minshew's 4 targets went to Kelce. Now, he didn't catch all of them. 1 was an interception, but still, he was 3 targets out of the 4, so that's pretty nice to see. He's also getting close to some milestones. He's 99 yards away from second all-time in receiving yards for a tight end, 7 touchdowns away from tying the 4th all-time in touchdowns. And then,
you think he'll get it this week?
No, probably not. But I do think they'll be forcing him the ball to try and get these yardage markers, and certainly if he gets a couple of touchdowns, that wouldn't be too bad either, just to strengthen his Hall of Fame resume. And he's also 203 yards away from his 8th 1,000-yard season. I think that one's pretty achievable in 2 games. So there's some interesting milestones there for him. So I'll give him a silver. I think they're going to pepper him with targets. Kareem Hunt, I'm leaving on the bench this week. It seems like since Isaiah Pacheco's come back, his workload has dropped each week, and they're just kind of going with a platoon-style thing. He had just 6 carries last week against the Chargers and has far lower of a touchdown upside with Mahomes or without Mahomes in the lineup. So I'm not going to play him. Over on the Tennessee side of the ball, well, the only starting grade I have is Tony Pollard. He will get a silver. In his last 3 games, he's averaging 108 yards, 6.6 yards per carry, which is 2.2 rushing yards over expectation per attempt, and a touchdown to his name. So he's been looking really good despite playing some stronger defenses there too. He seems to be the engine of this offense right now. Cam Ward's on the bench. You got better options. All the wide receivers, I don't know how you could possibly decide which one to play on any given week, so they're all a bench. And KC's a tougher matchup too. And then the tight ends, we got a tight end timeshare now with Puka Nacua and Gunnar Helm. Gunnar Helm, I think, is an interesting long-term dynasty type guy, but right now it's a timeshare I don't want to invest in, like a bungalow on Mount Everest. I don't want that timeshare. Yeah, so that's it for the Tennessee side of things. Real easy on that team.
Yeah, there's a couple of matchups this week where it's basically like blanket bench just about everybody. And here's one of them right here. It's the Bills and Browns. I'm sure the Bills took a boat across Lake Erie to get to Cleveland this week. And I'm sure people are wondering what to do with Josh Allen against one of the league's best defenses. And the answer is you start him, but it's just a silver grade for Josh Allen. Cleveland top 5 in almost all defensive categories against quarterbacks, although they have allowed both Cam Ward and Caleb Williams to go for multiple passing touchdowns in just the last 2 weeks. And top corner Denzel Ward looks like he might not go this week with a calf injury, so you can still fire up Josh Allen very safely. Is it Dalton Kincaid or Dawson Knox that he's passing the ball to? The easiest positional matchup is against the tight end when you go against the Browns. Now, Knox scored twice last week and had a bunch of yardage the week before. And Kincaid scored the week before. Last week, both had 4 targets and 3 receptions in New England. To be honest, one of them will probably score, and one of them will probably have a decent yardage day of like over 60 yards. But it's a super weird split right now, and Jackson Hawes is involved too. So I'd rather leave all 3 on the bench in this scenario. Khalil Shakir is the only wide receiver you'd consider playing. I'll throw a bronze grade on him. He mostly runs from the slot, and he gets the best matchup against Miles Harden, who's a completely real person. And Pro Football Focus is 110th ranked corner out of 112. Harden has allowed 5 touchdowns in his coverage this year and has a passer rating of 120 against him. Khalil Shakir's in kind of a good spot here. And James Cook, I'll give a gold grade to. Cleveland's run defense has taken some lumps the past few weeks. 4 different runners have topped 20 PPR points against the Browns in the last 5 games, including DeAndre Swift going for 98 and 2 scores on the ground last week, and the aforementioned Tony Pollard going for 161 and 2 the week before. Cook always gets a crazy workload, and he scored twice last week, so I'm not afraid of starting him this week. On the Browns side, there's only 2 Browns that you'd even consider starting this week. First is Quinshon Judkins, who basically got all the work last week against the Bears, but that game got out of hand so quickly that the Browns abandoned the run. And there's a little bit of danger in that happening in this one, too, against the Bills. But the Bills, they're not very good against the run, and they're coming off an emotional win in New England last week. And when they come off emotional wins, they have letdowns the next week. They beat KC and Arrowhead in week 9. Then they lost to the Dolphins, and Devon Achane had 40 points in that game. They beat Tampa in a shootout in week 11. Then they lost to the Texans on Thursday night. And Woody Marks didn't have a huge game, but he had 74 yards on the ground in that one. Overall, the Bills have allowed 5 different runners to top 30 PPR points this season, including Travion Henderson last week. So I got a silver grade on Judkins. And then there's Harold Fannin. He's the only other guy you could consider in this game. 14 targets last week. Caught 7 of them, but for only 48 yards. And David Njoku looks like he's going to miss this week. But the Bills are the best tight end defense in the league, and it's not really that close. They allow an average of only 2.7 catches and 33 yards per game to the tight end position as a whole. They've only given up 2 scores all year. It's a bench grade for Fannin. I think he'll be better than 3 catches for 33 yards, but not much better. Maybe 4 catches for 40-ish yards. That's bench grade for me. All right, now we got to take a quick break, and we're going to, Maj is going to tell us a little bit about Fanball.
Fanball is DFS for those of us who can't devote full-time job hours to scouring news feeds, memorizing depth charts, or tracking our status on the Roto Grinders Top 50. We get it, you've got a life, but also enjoy a good sweat when you're not coaching Little League or taking in your 5th soccer game of the weekend. And at Fanball, you can still 20, 50, or even 100x your entry fee. Every week of the NFL season has 3 featured tournaments. You can take down the $1,000 top prize in the Peacock with just a $20 entry. $5 gets you in the High Five, where first place wins $400. Or throw a buck in the Buck Hunter for a shot at the $100 top prize. And if you decide you want a little more skin in the game, you can find up to $100 NFL double-ups and $50 winner-take-alls. So register today at Fanball to scratch that DFS itch without worrying about whales. And use promo code ALMOST for an up to $20 deposit match.
As a Minnesota sports fan, I really hate the amount of Bears and Cubs stuff that Maj has on and in his background in these ads. It's really bugging me here. Well, anyway, welcome back to Fantasy Football Almost Daily. You can find me, Matt Harrison, on Twitter or Blue Sky at Explosive Output. Trevor is on Twitter at TJones5, and Kent Weyrauch is at Kent Weyrauch, and you got to spell out the Weyrauch. It's Weyrauch. Holy smokes.
Yeah, holy smokes is right.
All right, now it's time for a segment we like to call Roll the Dice.
It's now time to roll the dice.
These are 9 players that might not normally be in your lineup, but you may want to roll the dice on them this week. Let's start with the quarterback position and Trevor Jones.
Yeah, quarterback this week, we'll go with Aaron Rodgers. Steelers are a touchdown road dog in what projects to be the highest scoring game of the week. Vegas has it at a 52 over-under right now. Helping Rodgers' outlook, the Lions have allowed the 5th most passing touchdowns, 8th most passing yards. It's a great lineup for the pass catchers, too. Only one team's allowed more receiver touchdowns than the Lions, 20. And no defense has given up more yards to the receiver position. And obviously, this is a familiar matchup for Aaron. He's got 26 Detroit matchups in his career. His average stat line is roughly 250 yards and 2 touchdowns, which you would certainly take in this week.
I'm sure the Lions fans are just scared to see Aaron Rodgers come back to their building one more time. So many bad memories for them. All right. Yeah. Kent, who do you got at the quarterback position?
I'm going with Caleb Williams, and this might seem weird with the injuries to their wide receiver core, but they still have a respectable receiving core left behind as well between DJ Moore, Olamide Zaccheaus, Colston Loveland, and Cole Kmet in a 2 tight end setup. The Packers will be without Micah Parsons on IR. This is a stat coming from Seth Walder of ESPN. Their pass rush win rate with Micah Parsons is 3rd in the NFL, and without is 32nd. Their EPA per dropback allowed with Parsons is average, middle of the pack, and without Parsons, 26th. So I think this is an exploitable matchup for Caleb Williams. He's quietly QB9 on the year in points per game, and he's had 2+ touchdowns in 3 of his last 4 games. They're on a good roll. Ben Johnson's in his bag. I mean, I just want to see him continue to impress, and I think the Bears have a real opportunity to take the division here.
Ben Johnson's in his bag?
Yeah.
It's deep in the bag.
You're doing well. Is this a phrase you're unfamiliar with?
I'm not familiar with.
Yeah, that's a real bag.
One. You kids in your hip lingo. Crazy.
I don't know if I'm qualified as a kid anymore, but I'll take it.
That's true. Bryce Young versus Tampa Bay is my roll of dice quarterback. Bryce has alternated 3 touchdown games with 1 touchdown games for the past month. And guess what? He had 1 touchdown last week. So it's 3 touchdown time against Tampa. And there's no better landing spot than Tampa. Their pass defense has fallen off a cliff over the last month. In their last 6 games, 5 quarterbacks have topped 270 yards. 5 quarterbacks have thrown for multiple touchdowns. Of those 5, 3 have thrown for 3 touchdown passes. Tyler Shuck was the only one who didn't throw for multiple scores in that 6-game stretch. He had 2 rushing touchdowns. So the average quarterback score in standard fantasy points against the Bucs over the last 6 games, 29.75. Bryce Young is a solid start, like silver grade at minimum for Bryce Young in this game. Let's go to the running back position. Trevor, who you got?
Yeah, we'll go with Arizona's Michael Carter. Arizona's down James Conner, Trey Benson, and then they just lost Bam Knight last week. Additionally, Amari DiMercato, sort of sometimes the passing game back. He came into last week's game with an injury, only saw 3 touches. Carter saw the lion's share of the running back workload with those guys out. He turned 18 touches into nearly 100 combo yards. Even when the other backs were healthy, Carter did have a good pass game role. He had 19 catches over his past 5 games. Falcons are not an opposing matchup for enemy running backs, either on the ground or through the air. So, yeah, Michael Carter could be looking at it nearly 20 touches in a decent matchup here.
All right. Kent, who do you got the running back position?
I am going with Audric Estime, who now plays for the Saints. He played last year with Denver, got released. With the Denver Broncos, he had 76 attempts for 310 yards and 2 touchdowns in a fill-in role, 4.1 yards per carry, did his job, was okay. In the 2024 running back draft class, he was first in Next Gen Stats production score. And his last year at Notre Dame, he had 210 attempts for 1,341 rushing yards and 18 touchdowns. He's coming in to play for the Saints this week. Now that they're down Devin Neal, Alvin Kamara, and he's looking to take on a New York Jets defense that is 4th in yards per game allowed, tied for 5th in rush touchdowns allowed the 6th most yards after contact per attempt, and have allowed at least 1 rush TD in 4 of their last 5 games. So it's a good spot for him.
Yeah, that is a nice spot against the Jets. It's always a nice spot against the Jets right now. My running back is Jawar Jordan versus the Vegas Raiders. Woody Marks iffy to play this week with an ankle injury, and they elevated Jordan from the practice squad to the active roster. Last week, he got his first taste of the NFL. He had 15 carries, 101 yards on the ground, added 2 catches for 17 yards. He has to have more gas in the tank than Nick Chubb, by the way, who missed last week, but looks like he's going to suit up at least this week. The Raiders have allowed the 4th most rushing scores this season at 15 on the year, and opposing backs as a group are averaging almost 30 touches per game. And so if there's 2 backs in play here, it seems like 15 touches is imminent for Jawar Jordan because they're not going to give Nick Chubb 20. If Woody Marks is active, I don't think you can play him. And Woody Marks did practice on Friday. So that puts a little pause in there. But if Woody Marks and his ankle is no good and the Texans probably don't need him to beat the Raiders, I would say that Jawar Jordan's in a good spot. All right, let's go to the receiver position. I think you guys both have tight ends, don't you? Trevor, you start us off.
Yeah, I took the easy one. Tight end versus the Bengals. This week, that's Darren Waller for the Dolphins. We've talked about since he has the worst tight end defense of all time. Waller's played in just 7 games this year himself, but he has 6 touchdowns in those 7. Last week, Waller was in a nearly identical spot against the second worst tight end defense, the Steelers, and he buried them for 7 catches, 66 yards, and 2 touchdowns, all season highs. This offense runs through 3 players. Like, it's really hard for me to picture anyone other than Achane, Waller, or Jalen Waddle scoring. So, yeah, Waller, tight end against the Bengals, man. Easy game.
It makes a lot of sense. Insert pick on tight end against the Bengals here. So,
I tried that last week in Scott Fishbowl by playing both Ravens tight ends, and that did not work out for me.
Yeah,
but
that
it was the right idea.
Likely was my take a chance, or nope, not that. Roll the dice. Tight end last week. Did not work. Kent, who do you got to roll the dice on this week?
I am rolling the dice on Colston Loveland. We talked about that Bears situation. There should be some consolidated targets with Odunze and Burden out. He already had 4 games in a row with 5+ targets, so he's on a good pace, kind of working his way into the offense, even though Kmet is back in action. And he's been perfect in the red zone last month, catching all 3 of his targets, 2 of which he turned into touchdowns. So going against this weakened Packers defense, like I talked about earlier, I think there's a good opportunity for him to be a top 12 tight end.
All right. My roll the dice receiver is a wide receiver, and I've got a bonus backup because he's a little dinged up right now. So I have Ricky Pearsall with Kendrick Bourne as the backup here. So Pearsall has a knee injury and an ankle injury. He really hasn't been healthy since September. He did not practice Thursday. Shanahan says he might still go, but this is a Monday night game, so you have to have another plan just in case. Shanahan notably unreliable on injury stuff. So that's why you really need to have Kendrick Bourne if you're thinking about doing Ricky Pearsall here. But Pearsall had 7 targets, 6 catches, 96 yards last week, all led the team. And I really like his matchup against the Colts this week. What the heck is going on? Oh, man. My computer's making noises at me. As I was saying, I like his matchup against the Colts this week. Last week, the Seahawks receivers combined for 17 catches and 233 yards against this Colts secondary that will for sure be missing Charvarius Ward, who's now on IR, and probably missing Sauce Gardner. Oh, by the way, the Colts have already allowed the most receptions and second most receiving yards to opposing wide receivers. So if you have Pearsall and he's active, you're starting him. If Kendrick Bourne is available, you pick him up as your backup option. And if Pearsall is out, you just slide Kendrick Bourne right into that spot. And those were the 9 players on whom you could roll the dice this week. We're going to move right back into the matchups. Bengals, Dolphins, and Trevor, Joe Burrow needs a get-right game, and he needs one bad. And he heads to Miami this Sunday. I think the only worry for the Bengals is it's going to be 80 degrees and sunny, and maybe Burrow falls in love with the Miami weather and asks to be traded there this offseason.
Mid-game, maybe he gets traded to the Dolphins.
Yeah, they need a quarterback, clearly.
And Joe's he's kind of going through it with his reflective press conferences. Yeah, this is a big matchup. A lot of fantasy implications here. Joe Burrow does get a silver since returning from injury. He's averaging over 40 pass attempts per game, which is a massive number. Further boosting his outlook is the expected return of T. Higgins from concussion, who got in limited practices on Wednesday and Thursday, I believe. Burrow would have had better numbers last week. Cincinnati reached Baltimore territory on 5 different drives that all ended in 0 points somehow. Miami's at bottom third defense against quarterbacks, and they just lost their best secondary player in Minka Fitzpatrick. Chase Brown also gets a silver. Dolphins are a good matchup for backs as they permit the 8th most touches and 4th most combo yards to enemy backs. The return of Samaje Perine from injury is eating into Chase Brown's workload a little bit, though Brown has made up for it by being an excellent receiving back with 17 catches in the 3 games since Perine returned. And even though Perine is getting extra work, Chase is a solid 19 touches per game over the last 3 that Perine has played. Jamar Chase is a gold. Miami's actually a tough matchup, allowing just 1 receiver to clear 60 yards in the last 3 games. But it's fantasy semifinals week. You're starting Jamar Chase. Let's be serious. T. Higgins is just a bronze. Sounds like he's going to clear the protocol. He's a quality start. He's got 9 touchdowns in his 12 games played this season. However, he's topped just 6 catches only once and only has 1 game over 100 receiving yards as well. So the floor is solid, but the ceiling game is much more likely to go to Jamar Chase. It is a Mike Gesicki revenge game, but he's on the bench. In the 20 games Gesicki's played with T. Higgins, he's got 1 touchdown. So unless T misses, you're keeping Gesicki on the bench. The Dolphins, their new starting quarterback is Quinn Ewers. Ewers is a sub-200-pound 7th-round rookie who's been behind Tua and Zach Wilson for most of the season. Going to pass there. Achane's a platinum. We know how bad Cincy's D is against tight ends, only slightly better against running backs. They've allowed the most combo yards per game to the position and the 4th most touchdowns. Achane's got a 20% target share. Excellent play. And then Jalen Waddle, he's got a bronze. It's not a huge drop-off to Ewers, but the game total did drop a few points once that news broke. It's been a month since Waddle cleared 55 yards, and the matchup is tough. Everyone just attacks through backs and tight ends, but he is viable strictly to his role in the offense in the high game total. And then Darren Waller was my roll the dice pass catcher, as we talked about.
There we go. Nice and easy. Kent, let's talk about the Packers and Bears. They're going to play on Saturday night, basically for the NFC North crown. I couldn't give this matchup to Trevor. Number one, because he's no longer on screen. And number two, because he can't take his cheese-colored glasses off. But how do you think Jordan Love and company will do in Soldier Field on Saturday?
Yeah, I think it's going to be slightly worse than last time that they played, just because of the difference in home field advantage and stuff like that. Jordan Love in last month, he's averaging 18 completions on 29 attempts, 220 yards per game. And he's had 3 interceptions in the last 2 weeks. So he's been a little bit sketchy here and there. And that includes his game against the Bears, where he did throw for 3 touchdowns. So that was a little bit nicer in Green Bay. Going on the road, this Chicago pass defense has been solid lately. Since week 10, they're 5th in EPA per dropback allowed, and they've had 1 interception in 5 of the last 6 games. So they've been playing really well on the pass defense side of things. So I have him at just a bronze grade. I was between bronze and silver, but I'm going to go down just with the home field advantage switch. Now, it sounds like Josh Jacobs is doubtful more than questionable. So I'm going to give Emmanuel Wilson the gold grade because this is obviously on the fly here a little bit, but the Bears defense has been struggling a little bit more on the run defense side of things. 6th most EPA per rush allowed since week 10 and the 4th most rush yards per play on the year. If this is an opportunity for Caleb Williams to get going, like I think he will, they're gonna need some different. Excuse me, I'm talking on the wrong side of the ball there. If Jordan Love has some struggle to get going, they're gonna need Emmanuel Wilson to run between the tackles hard, and I think he can fill that role for him. So gold grade for him. And looking at the receivers for the Packers, it's a little bit tricky. Jaden Reed, he's just kind of coming back into his full form. Offensive snaps have been ramping up over the last couple of weeks, 47% in week 14, 65 last week. Should be up to basically a full load this week. He's led the team with 10 targets in the last 2 weeks, of which he's caught 9 for 86 scoreless yards, unfortunately. So there hasn't really been a ton of fantasy goodness in terms of wide receivers on this team. I will give Reed a bronze grade just because he's leading the group. Christian Watson, I'm going to leave him on the bench. He's questionable with a chest injury. His targets have fallen a little bit since Reed has returned. He's a big play guy, and since this is a Saturday game, I don't think you want to lean on a low volume, big play type player in your semifinals. So I'm leaving him on the bench. And then same deal with Luke Musgrave. You're just going to have better options out there, I'm pretty sure, for the tight end position. Over on the Bears side of the ball, like I said, Caleb Williams, silver grade. He's my roll the dice player. DeAndre Swift, I will give him a silver. He seems to be holding on to the running back 1 role in the offense now after it looked like Kyle Monangai was eating into his work a little bit. Swift has had 17 plus opportunities in each of the last 3 games. And while Monangai was kind of becoming the goal line back, that shifted back a little bit more to a timeshare. Swift has actually had more inside the 10 and inside the 5 rush attempts in their last 3 games and has had 2 touchdowns to Monangai's 1 in that time. So he's been playing a little bit better. He's running at 5.8 yards per carry during that stretch as well. Ben Johnson, he's in his bag, Matt. I mean, come on.
Okay.
So with that,
dirty, Kent. It sounds dirty.
Well, it could be a little dirty if you want it to be, but Kyle Monangai, I was split. I'm going with bench grade here. He ran just 11 times for 33 yards last week. In his last 3 weeks, he's caught 1 of his 5 targets as well for 0 yards. So it's just been a little bit of a struggle for him lately to get going. A little bit of that rookie wall maybe. Tough to trust in your semifinals. I think that they're really going to use Swift more so than Monangai in this game. DJ Moore will get a silver grade again with that consolidation of targets with the other guys out. He caught 4 of his 5 targets last week for 69 yards and 2 touchdowns against the Cleveland defense. I do think that it's just a volume up, efficiency down type of thing for DJ Moore. So I couldn't quite get him up to a gold grade, but I think he's going to have a good game. And then Colston Loveland, silver grade. He was my roll the dice tight end. So we're good to go there.
There we go. All right. The Vikings conclude their tour of the NFC least this Sunday in New Jersey against the Giants. And I think you can fire up JJ McCarthy again. 250 and 2 through the air last week in Dallas, added a gritty run into the end zone as well. He was QB 6 last week. He was QB 12 the week before. Those are 2 QB 1 finishes in the last 2 weeks. He's feasting on bad defenses, just like the Giants, who are bottom 11 in every category against the quarterback, have allowed the most rushing yards to quarterbacks in the league this year, by the way. And JJ can run a little bit too. It is worth noting that both of McCarthy's tackles and his center are on the injury report this week as well. Christian Darrisaw, I think, is the one most in danger of not going. He didn't play last week. But Ryan Kelly and Brian O'Neill are also on the injury report, and keep an eye on that. If both of them don't go as well, I think you definitely downgrade McCarthy, maybe even all the way to the bench. I don't know if I can trust McCarthy with 3 of his 5 starting linemen not playing. Justin Jefferson gets a silver grade. I think he scores this week, by the way. He should have caught a touchdown last week, kind of dropped it, and then had one called back for a penalty. The Vikings are clearly targeting him in the red zone. And even if they get their way, even if they get way up in this game, they're evaluating their passing game for the rest of this season. They're going to keep throwing the ball. Justin Jefferson, by the way, needs 168 yards to hit 1,000 on the season. And KOC already said that they're going to try to get him that. So I think Justin Jefferson is heavily in focus this week. Jordan Addison and Jalen Naylor, they're both startable in a pinch with bronze grades. The Giants have allowed the 5th most receiving yards to opposing wide receivers at 163 per game. Naylor coming off a 2-touchdown game in Dallas. Addison has been a downfield threat for JJ. He had another deep catch last week, but Naylor's the guy who's kind of been JJ's whoopee a little bit. He's kind of just found him at the right time. So I think both are startable with bronze grades, as is TJ Hawkinson. Quietly put up a couple of respectable weeks. Even with Max Brosmer as his quarterback, he had 6 catches for 59 yards. And in the last 2 weeks, scored against the Commanders and had 4 for 66 last week against Dallas. And JJ's been throwing the ball in the red zone a ton. And if Jefferson is double covered, which is happening on almost all of his red zone routes right now, that's how TJ Hawkinson gets open. That's how Josh Oliver scores 2 touchdowns against the Commanders. The Giants aren't a particularly easy matchup for tight ends, mostly because you haven't really needed to utilize the tight end that much to beat them. But their pass rush is garbage, and wide receivers have been open all day. And Dallas Goedert scored on them thrice this season in their 2 meetings. Hunter Henry put up 4 for 73 a couple weeks ago. I think TJ's in a good spot. Aaron Jones and Jordan Mason both get a bronze grade too. It was about an even split in the backfield. Slight edge to Jones last week, 12-10 in carries in favor of Jones. Jones had 3 catches. Mason didn't have a catch. But Mason has seen 6 red zone touches in the last 2 weeks compared to Jones's 2. And the Giants allow the 2nd most combo yards to opposing backs at 157 per game. So if you split that, and even if you take off a little, these guys are looking at like 70 yards apiece. And that's worthy of a bronze. So I think they're both in play. Jackson Dart is miraculously not on the injury report. He's had 5 confirmed concussions between college and the NFL and was in the blue tent being evaluated for a concussion last week, and they threw him back in the game. It feels like he's the least likely of NFL quarterbacks to finish a game in week 16. And he faces the top quarterback defense in the league. The Vikings are top 5 in pass yards and touchdowns allowed. They've only given up 1 touchdown on the ground to a quarterback this year. The Vikings did lose stud edge rusher Jonathan Grenard and starting safety Josh Metellus to IR, though, this week. It's still a bench grade for Dart, though. I can't figure out a way to put him in my lineup. Wan'Dale Robinson gets a bronze grade. It actually might be better if Dart goes down and Jameis comes in, maybe. But Robinson has been a pretty reliable, like 10 targets per game over the past month and a half. Problem is he's only catching just over half of his targets in the past 5 weeks. He scores against bad defenses. He doesn't score against good ones. The Vikings are a good one. They're only allowing 9 receptions. Ooh, there we go.
9 times.
9 receptions per game to wide receivers. That's 3rd fewest in the league. That's so few. They haven't allowed a wide receiver touchdown since week 9. It's been 6 weeks since a wide receiver has scored against the Vikings. It's crazy. Theo Johnson catches 3 balls per game. Pretty much exactly. And he's alternated between 30-yard games and 70-yard games over the past 5 weeks. Problem is he had a 70-some yard game last week, and in the last 6 games, no tight end has topped 45 yards against the Vikings. Only Mark Andrews has scored in those games. That was way back in week 10. So Theo Johnson's on the bench. And then there's Tyrone Tracy and Devin Singletary. Tracy seems to have taken the backfield back. He had 18 touches to Singletary 6 last week. Tracy also scored twice, and it seems like there's a little bit of wiggle room for Tracy here to get to double-digit PPR points. The Vikings have been bend but don't break against runners, and it feels like a high-volume day for both backs could be in play if the Giants want to keep it anywhere close. 9 different backs have hit double-digit PPR points against Minnesota in their last 8 games, and that includes both Javonte Williams and Malik Davis last week. So I'll give Tracy a bronze grade. Singletary, I'd just leave on the bench. If you're starting Devin Singletary in the fantasy playoffs, you've got problems, and you're probably not going to win. All right, I wanted to remind everybody that this show is brought to you by Game Blazers. Try Game Blazers this week for your share of $36,000 in prizes and free-to-play contests. Sign up with the referral code FFAD. You get a free starter pack, a free rare pack, and an offer for 2 more rare packs for just $5. Learn more at gameblazers.com. All right, Trevor, the Chargers head to Dallas this week, and it's a much easier task than last week for Justin Herbert and the offense. But have fantasy players just lost trust in the Chargers offense at this point?
Yeah, it's tough because the ecosystem around Herbert has just fallen apart recently, specifically the offensive line. Herbert's taken 14 sacks in his 3 games since the bye and averaged just 25 pass attempts in those 3, as LA tries to scheme around having backups or third stringers at both tackle spots. So, yeah, it's not been great, but it's kind of the best matchup. Dallas is league worst in passing yards, passing touchdowns, and rushing touchdowns allowed to enemy QBs. So that keeps Herbert in play as a low-end QB1 this week. The running game, I'm getting both Marion Hampton and Kamani Vidal bronzes. In the 2 games since Hampton returned, the workload's really split right in half. Hampton has 31 touches to Vidal's 28. However, Vidal is on the field more, 69 and 64% snaps run compared to just 31 and 36 for Hampton. I guess Vidal is the guy they trust with pass protection right now, which would explain why he's seeing a lot of snaps, but obviously Hampton touches the ball when he's on the field. On the season, Dallas has been a good matchup for running backs, but not since they added Quinnen Williams. In the 5 games since the Quinnen Williams trade, the Cowboys are giving up just 79 yards per game on the ground. Volume and the game having the second highest total do keep both backs in play. For the receivers, only Ladd McConkey gets a bronze, keeping the other receivers on the bench. Quentin Johnson's got 5 catches in his last 4 games. Keenan Allen hasn't topped 60 yards since week 7. I am keeping the light on for Ladd. He gets the most slot work for the Chargers, and Dallas has been eaten up by some slots recently, like Amon-Ra and Rashee Rice for 92 yards apiece in their last 3 games. Cowboys have also given up the most touchdowns to receivers and the 3rd most yards to the position. Rondé Gadsden we're keeping on the bench as well. He hasn't scored in 6 weeks, and he has just 8 combined catches in his last 4 games. Dallas has only given up 4 touchdowns to the position all season. On the other side here, Dak gets a silver. He's been great recently, averaging 322 passing yards per game over his last 5. And that's come against some good defenses like Philly, Kansas City, and Minnesota. He also has multiple touchdown throws in 3 of the 5. The Chargers are a tough matchup. They've allowed the fewest passing touchdowns. But Dallas leads the league in offensive yards and is 5th in scoring offense. And this game has, I think, the 2nd or 3rd highest total on the weekend. Javonte Williams gets a bronze. After a bit of a hot start to the season, he's kind of settled in as a nice running back 2 weekly with at least 15 touches in 6 straight games. The floor has been good. The ceiling really hasn't. He hasn't topped 100 combo yards since week 7. Only 2 backs have cleared 100 rushing yards against the Chargers since week 2. That was Saquon and Devon Achane, which Javonte Williams is not. Dallas even held JT to 94 yards. In the passing game here, CeeDee Lamb, he stays hot with the goal. The Chargers' best wide receiver defense, which they are very good, but that comes mostly against outside receivers. And CeeDee runs a team-high 36% of his routes from the slot. He's got 3 straight games with over 110 yards as well. George Pickens, this is maybe the toughest one I had all week. I ended up with a bronze. He's been comatose in the last 2 games, just 8 catches for 70 yards combined and multiple loafing, bad loafing clips. The Chargers are the number 1 toughest defense for opposing receivers, only allowed 6 receiving touchdowns to the position all year. Only 4 teams have given up less yards. We're not benching a guy with like 35-point upside in any given week. So Pickens' talent and game environment keep him starting, but lower the expectations a little bit. Finally, we'll round it out with, did you have something there on Pickens, Matt?
I was going to say, Pickens is the kind of guy you start if you played against Puka already.
Yeah, it's almost a good way to think about it. Like, do you need ceiling or do you need floor? Because if you need ceiling, Pickens has it higher than almost anybody. Yeah.
George Pickens or Mike Evans asking for a friend.
Mike Evans.
That's where I'm at right now.
Yeah, I think Mike Evans, but man, you should be excited for that. It's like, oh, I don't know what I want to do there.
Yeah, it's a good problem to have. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. We'll round it out with Jake Ferguson. He gets a bronze. He's been consistent recently, 4 or more catches in 5 of his last 6. Just 1 touchdown in that stretch, though. LA permits the 5th fewest catches to the position, though each of the last 3 tight end ones to face the Chargers did clear at least 4 catches and 60 yards. So he's an okay start.
All right. Hey, guys, did you know that fantasy football season is almost over? Oh, that's so sad.
Yeah.
Do you know what's fun, though? Fantasy golf. And we've got a huge fantasy golf contest coming up at Sports Hub. I'm going to let my friend Pat Mayo tell you about it.
All right, people, it's that time of year again. The Mayo Cup is officially open. That's right, your yearly reminder that you could win life-changing money if you stop making coward picks and actually commit to greatness. Let's talk stakes, because the Mayo Cup, not messing around. $110,000 to first place. 110,000 actual real dollars. And with your $250 entry, you're playing for a prize pool of $1.2 million. That's 7 figures of pure, delicious fantasy golf sweat. And this season, the Mayo Cup is fully available in the Fanball app. Week-to-week picks, leaderboard sweats, berating yourself for fading the guy who wins by 6. You can do it all right from your phone. So head to the Fanball app, search for the Mayo Cup, and get yourself entered. $1.2 million in prizes. $110,000 to the winner. Just $250 to play. This is the year, unless you blow it again. But hey, you might not. Sign up now. The contest tees off January 15th.
Ooh, welcome back. I love one and done golf, by the way. Super fun format. And by the way, if a $250 entry fee is too rich for your blood, Fantasy Golf Championships has a bunch of different season-long leagues that run. And actually, I'm hosting a private 40-player tournament, and I'm inviting you who are listening to this program right now. Go check my Twitter if you want to join me in that contest. Trevor, you could be in it. Kent, you could be in it. It's a $25 contest. We're going to limit it to 40 people. It's going to pay out the top 10. It's going to be very fun. Come play one and done golf with me. Now time for a segment that we like to call 2 Tough Nuts.
It's time for 2 Tough Nuts.
Crack. I don't know why I crack myself up every time I say that.
Yeah, don't crack your own tough nuts. We don't want to.
Yeah, that's self-inflicted injury right there. Those of you at home who want to play along with 2 Tough Nuts, I always remind everybody, do so very safely. Do it in the comfort of your own home, preferably with your drapes closed. All right. Tough nut number 1. Which current rookie quarterback will have the highest ADP in redraft leagues in 2026? Kent, let's start with you.
I am going with Jackson Dart. He's got some actually interesting efficiency numbers under the hood. He's 14th in EPA, CPOE composite, which is a lot of letters to say. One of the most predictive things of future success. And he's had at least 1 pass touchdown in every single game that he's played in its entirety. He's also getting Malik Neighbors back next year, which should be an uptick for him. Should be a lot of fun to watch. His rushing floor, not to mention, is one of the best things about him. In his 9 full games, 70 attempts, 400 rushing yards, and 7 rush touchdowns. I mean, he's a fun player, maybe a little too much fun at times with his concussion issues, but he's going to be a lot of fun to watch next year, I think.
All right, Trevor, did you get a tough nut right last week?
I did not, and I felt good about getting this one right. And then Kent said Jackson Dart, and I was like, this is too easy, right? So I said Jackson Dart as well.
Okay.
Dart's got an elite left tackle in Andrew Thomas and an elite receiver 1 in Malik Neighbors. Cam Ward has a passable offensive line with the worst skill position players in the league. I understand the Titans have a ton of cap space. Good players aren't available in free agency for the most part anymore, like they used to be. And like Kent said, the dual threat ability really pushes Dart over the top. He surpassed 54 rushing yards in 6 of his 9 games this year. That's massive. I think the only way this isn't Jackson Dart is if the Giants draft Mendoza at number 1, which would surprise me.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to draft Mendoza at number 1. All right, Trevor, I thought I gave you a layup this week. You got it wrong again. It's Tyler. No, it's not.
I was going to say.
I was like, I'm going to just quit this segment
But anyway, it's Shadur Sanders.
I do have Jackson Dart. Kent and Trevor, you guys kind of nailed it. They have the pieces in place. Malik Neighbors, By the way, they have Cam Scattaboo returning too. That's a pretty nice offensive piece to have. Wan'Dale Robinson isn't a bad second receiver. Theo Johnson, a very serviceable tight end. They're probably going to get the number 1 overall pick unless something goes very wrong for them and they win in the next 3 weeks.
Well, they play the Raiders in 2 weeks, I believe.
That's not good.
Yep.
If they do get the number 1 pick, I think they trade out of that pick and they trade it for a bunch of other draft picks that could help them. Plus, they're going to have a new head coach, and either it's going to be an offensive mind that can help develop a young QB, or they're going to put that in place with a new offensive coordinator. And he's one of the few quarterbacks who does offer some legit running potential. We talked about it a little bit on last week's show. There's just not many more running quarterbacks anymore. And he might be this generation of quarterbacks' best bet to be the rushing upside QB. All right. Good job, Trevor. You did
On
it.
the board.
Your first tough nut correctly.
It only took a month, I think. So.
Yeah, I think so. All right. Tough nut number 2. 17 different flex eligible players scored multiple touchdowns in week 15. Which of them has the best chance to repeat their multi-touchdown effort in both weeks 16 and 17? Basically, who's going to be the hero of the fantasy playoffs? All right, Trevor, you go first this time.
I went Trey McBride. This week he's got a tough matchup against Atlanta, although the Falcons have played a horrific tight end schedule. They only faced 2 tight ends you would consider above average. That was Tyler Warren, who went for 8 and 99. And then George Kittle, his first game back from injury was against this team. So we actually got blanked. I went to my betting site and found that BetOnline has Trey McBride at plus 450 to score twice this week. For comparison, James Cook, somebody who's good bet to score, plus 350. So it's not as crazy as you think for him to score twice this week. It's really just this week you're worried about because next week is Trey McBride against the Bengals, which I don't even know what kind of cosmic forces might just – the greatest tight end of all time against the worst defense of all time. Just going to be crazy. Arizona's on running back 4. Jacoby Brissett loves getting 40 pass attempts off the Cardinals. Sets up another big McBride week in the fantasy championship.
All right, Kent, who's the fantasy hero coming down the pike with multiple touchdowns in the next 2 weeks?
Yeah, I went with Dallas Goedert. I tried to pick one, you said flex eligible. I tried to pick one that was a little bit like you could potentially find him and play him there in a flex spot with another tight end or something. But he's going against the Commanders this week, and they have completely given up their will to live. And they were atrocious even when they were trying. So they were the 4th most points allowed to tight ends on the year. So that's a good matchup. They got the Buffalo Bills in week 17. So that should be at least a high scoring affair where you have the opportunity for some touchdowns. Dallas Goedert has 3 multi-touchdown games this season already, tied for 6th, and he's got 17 total targets the last 2 weeks. I think it's a good spot for him.
Those are both really good answers, and I'm not even lying about that. I really like those answers, and I am considering just changing my answer to Trevor's answer right now and Trey McBride. I didn't end up with Trey McBride as the correct answer though. I have Travion Henderson, who had 14 carries, 148 yards, and 2 scores last week. This week he gets the Ravens. They've been a little bit better against the run as of late, but they allowed 2 multi-score games to backs this year. And Henderson is really good in the pass game too. The Ravens have given up the 4th most receptions and receiving yards to opposing backs. So I think he's in play from multiple angles, and they're really kind of dwindling down on Ramondre Stevenson's touches right now. And then they get the Jets in week 17. They're just brutal against runners. Multiple touchdowns to running backs in 5 straight games. They gave up 4 touchdowns to the Jags backs last week.
Mm-hmm.
All through the air, by the way. Trey McBride's a fantastic answer. And Trevor, guess what? I'm going to give you credit as the correct answer because
all right.
I really should. I got this one wrong.
Wow.
My friend Paul from Utah never got his own tough nut wrong. Well, those were my 2 tough nuts to crack, and Trevor cracked them better than I could. So here we go. All right, let's move back to the matchups, and we're going to get to, man, what a doozy of a game. The Jets and Saints play this Sunday. Kent, the only reason anyone would watch this game is if they had fantasy players going in this game, are there any that you really want to play?
The true degenerates among us are tuning in for every second of this game. What are you talking about, Matt?
God.
Yeah, this is a tough one. I guess we'll just start on the Jets side of things. I will give Breece Hall a bronze grade. He's just had 12 plus touches every single game this season. Low yardage totals these last couple weeks, 37 scrimmage yards last week, 43 the week before. But he does have 10 red zone opportunities in the last month. So despite only scoring one touchdown, there's at least a little bit of scoring upside, I guess. He's startable in like a flex play for sure in most leagues. So you got to give him a starting grade. Adonai Mitchell, I will give a silver grade to. Since week 11, he's fourth in average air yards per game, and he has a 27% target share in his last 3 games, which is a very good mark to hit. This New Orleans defense, they're tough. They're the 4th lowest success rate allowed among dropbacks. But they are 21st in explosive plays allowed in the last month, which is where Mitchell's making his money. So I gave him the silver grade. I want to find a little silver lining, so to speak, with Mitchell in this game. John Mechie, we're leaving on the bench, low volume, not interested. And then Mason Taylor sounds like he's not going to play with that neck injury. So obviously you're not starting him. Tyrod Taylor, not interested. Only 1 game with 200 plus yards. And 1 game with 2+ passing touchdowns. And those were different games. So you really have no upside to him right now. Over on the New Orleans side of things, Tyler Shuck. Well, you may have considered him as the answer for your tough nut. We're leaving him on the bench. He has had 18.1 fantasy points or better in his last 3 games, but only 3 passing touchdowns in the last month. A couple of rushing touchdowns kind of helped him get there. So you're just not interested. Yeah.
I made this mistake last week when I said, oh, you don't even need to pass against the Jets to get anything done. And then Trevor Lawrence went for 5 touchdowns.
That's fair. That is fair. Maybe there's an opportunity there. You just probably have better options is really what it comes down to in your semifinals. I had talked about Audric Estime already. He gets a silver grade, roll the dice player. Evan Hull, just to call out his name, some people think there might be an opportunity. I'm leaving him on the bench. I think this is going to be Estime's backfield for at least this game. We'll find out for sure. But Chris Olave, I will give a gold grade to. I think he's going to get essentially all the targets in this team because Estime's not much of a pass catcher. He only had like 17 receptions in college or something like that. With Kamara, Vele, Neal all out, 10 plus targets feels very likely for Chris Olave in this matchup. And the New York Jets are 27th in explosive passing plays allowed in the last month. So there's at least an opportunity here for him. He might get the bracket, but maybe he can deal with that just by pure volume. Juwan Johnson, with the receivers out, I will give a cracked glass bronze. Like if you really need a tight end for some reason, you can start him. He'll probably have an uptick in targets. In games with 7+ targets, he averages 5.7 receptions and 56 yards. So that's not bad. You might get a touchdown out of that too. It'll fill the gap okay. And the New York Jets have not really played many tough tight ends either. The only top 5 tight end they've played all year has been Kyle Pitts, and he went 7 for 8 for 82 yards against them. So I don't know. If you think Juwan Johnson can get the job done, throw him in a flex maybe or a tight end if you really need it. But yeah, just in case.
Did you get to like 6 tepid starting grades in that game?
I found ways to feel positive about players because I'm a true degenerate, like I said.
Rainbows and sunshine for Kent Weyrauch. That's all it is.
Yep.
All right. The Bucks and Panthers are about to play their first matchup between these 2 divisional rivals over the next 3 weeks. And that's going to decide which of these teams goes to the playoffs. I already told you I liked Bryce Young as my roll the dice quarterback. So what about his receivers? Tet McMillan returned to practice on Thursday. He was dealing with foot and ankle injuries. Maybe it's because of those nagging injuries that Jalen Coker led the team last week with 4 catches and 60 yards plus a score. Tet's volume has just dried up the last few weeks, though. In week 11, he had 8 catches. Since then, 2, 1, and 2 in the 3 games since. That's not good. I'm going to get to bronze grades on both. Tampa's been terrible against the pass as of recent, but they've kind of limited wide receivers in that. They're giving up a lot to running backs and tight ends. Only 3 touchdowns allowed to wide receivers in the last 5 games. They've limited yardage. It's weird. They have been terrible against pass-catching backs, and that's why Rico Dowdle gets a gold grade from me here. He's getting about 17 carries per game. He's much better than Chuba Hubbard at pass-catching. Not that Chuba Hubbard's bad, but Dowdle's just a little bit better. Tampa, okay against traditional backs between the tackles. but they've allowed the 9th most receptions and then the most yards to receiving running backs. So backfield receiving yardage totals in the last 5 weeks, 66 to James Cook, 61 to Ty Johnson. That was in the same game. Both of them scored through the air. 83 and a score to the Cards combo of backs. 8 catches for 82 yards to Bijan last week. So there's huge catch upside here. So I got Dowdle as a gold. Hubbard I could see getting mixed in, but I can't advise you starting him in a fantasy playoff week like this. Bucky Irving is back, and he's on the other side. I'm going to start him with a silver grade. It would be a gold grade. I kind of think he's still a little bit injured, though. He's got the touch totals, 19, 17, and 17 since his return, but his yardage totals have been kind of bad for a player of his magnitude and slipperiness. Only 81, 81, and 71 combo yards in this game. Now, he has scored in 2 out of 3 games. That has kept you afloat. The matchup is great. Carolina gives up 4.8 yards per carry. That's the 4th worst in the league. And runners average just over a touchdown per game against them. So I think Bucky is good enough to get a silver grade here. I'm just worried that he can't have the big blow-up game that we all need. Baker Mayfield, he also looks kind of hurt. He did top 200 yards last week for the first time since week 10, though. Threw for multiple scores, so you're saying there's a chance here. The kids call the Carolina pass defense mid, but Stafford managed 243 and 2, and Shuck got to 272 and 1 in the last 2 weeks. I think Baker's kind of in the middle of that there, like 260 and 1.5 touchdowns ish. That sounds about right to me. That seems like a Shibuichi, somewhere between a bronze and a silver. So we'll go Shibuichi on Baker Mayfield. Then there's the wide receivers. By the way, Cade Otton looks like he's not going to play, so you're not even considering a tight end. Mike Evans, Emeka Egbuka, and Chris Godwin. All 3 of them played for the first time ever in a game last week. Evans was back as the alpha, 12 targets in that game. Egbuka had a solid 7 targets. Godwin had 5 targets. He caught 4 of them, only for 20 yards, but he had the touchdown, and the other 2 didn't. When all 3 of them are out there, it's really pick your poison time. Godwin runs the most routes out of the slot, about half of them, so he gets the best matchup against slot corner Chow Smith-Wade, who is totally not made up. J.C. Horn likely goes against Mike Evans, but that matchup, it's not as scary as it used to be. Horn's allowed 5 touchdowns in his coverage this year. That's on the higher end. This could be a repeat of what the Rams receivers did just 2 weeks ago. Devontae, Puka, and Xavier Smith each hit 11 PPR points in that game. So Evans gets a silver as the alpha. Egbuka and Godwin get a bronze. I don't mind if you start them here. All right, let's go over to the Falcons and Cardinals. And Trevor, we all saw it coming. Kirk Cousins and Kyle Pitts are fantasy playoff heroes. Can they keep it up on Sunday in the desert?
I think one of them can. We'll start with the Falcons with Kirk. I am putting Kirk on the bench. Before he turned back the clock last week against Tampa, as Tampa was melting down, his next best fantasy outputs were 199 and 2 and 234 and 1. That came against the Saints and Jets, who are not very good defenses. He's a low ceiling play, not a great matchup. Bijan, I'm giving a platinum to. Arizona gives up the 5th most rushing yards and rushing touchdowns to the position. Bijan's been a volume monster, averaging more than 25 touches per game in his last 3. Dream matchup for the fantasy playoffs. I'm going to go out on a limb a little bit and give Drake London a goal. It sounds like he's going to play this week. He got in a limited practice on Thursday. Prior to his injury, he was crushing. He had 3 straight games with 6+ catches and over 100 yards. Cardinals are not an imposing matchup for enemy receivers. They've allowed the following receiver outings in just their last 4 games: 385-2, 7-167-2, 3 for 78, 5-71-1, and 4-50-1. And that's everybody from Puka Nacua to Parker Washington. Kyle Pitts is a silver. Obviously, he blew up for the fantasy performance of a lifetime last week. I don't think we're chasing the box score here. His targets have been trending up in the last 4 weeks since Kirk took over, going from 5 to 8 to 10 to 12. Certainly that'll come down a little bit with Drake London back. He does have 3 straight games with at least 6 catches and 80 yards. Arizona is a good matchup. They're bottom 10 in both yards and catches allowed to the position. So it's not as good as it was maybe a day or 2 ago, but it's still a good grade for Kyle Pitts.
Trevor, help me make this make sense. You got a gold grade on London and a silver grade
I understand.
On and a bench grade on Cousins.
Yes, I just think it's so
It's got to be at
concentrated.
least a bronze then. If you can support like two good receivers, the quarterback has to do it. Bijan's not throwing this ball.
Are we sure he's not? Man, it's just Kirk is a 0 in the ground game. He's not getting you any rushing output whatsoever. And it's just, even if he throws for 250 yards and 2 touchdowns, which that's kind of his ceiling.
Bronze worthy.
I don't know. Maybe it's just kind of the fantasy semifinals that's given me just kind of throwing Kirk to the side.
He's probably ranked in the mid to low 20s out of quarterbacks this week. But if you like his receivers enough, I mean,
he's close probably to a roll the dice quarterback. Maybe,
there we go.
A true bench.
I'll take it.
All right. On the other side, we got Jacoby Brissett, who's just the most consistent quarterback of all time. Give him a bronze. In his 9 starts this year, he has multiple touchdowns in 8 of 9, 40 passing attempts in 7 of 9, averaging over 300 yards a game. Crazy. Atlanta's not an opposing matchup. They've already given up 23 passing touchdowns on the year. And Arizona has just the one running back left, Michael Carter, which should keep the game plan focused on the pass, as if they needed more reasons to throw it. Michael Carter was my roll the dice player, so we'll skip him. I'm throwing a gold on Michael Wilson as well. Any NFL player having a 5-game stretch where you're seeing over 13 targets per game, it's probably worth a gold. Atlanta's permitted 17 wide receiver touchdowns this year, which is 4th most in the league, so it's a good matchup too. I'm throwing the commercial bronze on Marvin Harrison. He did return to practice this week in a limited fashion. However, I think he's the clear 3rd option in the passing game now behind Trey McBride and Michael Wilson. He re-injured himself mid-game the last time he came back from an injury. I don't really trust him to finish the game. He did clear 13 PPR points in 6 of his 10 starts. And if we're talking about 40 passing attempts, it's probably enough to keep him live. Trey McBride, a smash play. If you have him, you're starting him. I will note Atlanta's the 2nd toughest matchup for tight ends. But Houston's a great tight end defense, and Trey McBride burned them to the ground. So, yeah, play Trey McBride.
He's an arsonist. Kent, one of the more intriguing reality games on Sunday is the Jags and Broncos in Denver. Travis Etienne coming off a Randy Moss Thanksgiving 1998 light game. 3 catches, 73 yards, and 3 touchdowns through the air last week. Can he repeat that?
Well, maybe, because Bashal Tootin is doubtful with a finger injury, so it's going to be all ETN all the time, baby. I won't give him a gold grade just because it is against Denver. I'll give him a silver. ETN had 82 plus scrimmage yards in 3 of his last 4 games, 5 total touchdowns in his last 2 games. His Denver defense, while they are tough, has been 21st in explosive rushing plays allowed in the last month, so they've been showing some cracks as of late, and I think ETN has an opportunity to have a good game here. Trevor Lawrence, I'll bet everything I have that he doesn't throw 5 touchdowns again. Any takers? No. But he will get a silver grade in this matchup.
Yes, I'll take that.
I'll take his 5 touchdowns, and then you get everything I own. So
yeah,
that's not too bad, I guess. In the last month, he's been quarterback 1 in points per game, obviously heavily influenced by last week, but he was quarterback 5 without the big one. So still pretty good. He's averaging 264 yards. He has 12 touchdowns to just 3 picks, and he's added 121 rushing yards and a score on the ground too. He's been playing really, really good football lately. And some of those cracks that Denver defense has been showing has been through the air too. 16th in EPA per dropback allowed in the last month, and 19th in explosive all explosive plays allowed, 11th in passing. So not as forgiving there, but still some opportunity when you think of the Broncos as a very good defense. He's going to be throwing to his wide receiver 1, Jacoby Myers. He's going to get a bronze grade in this game. I don't know. I was kind of in between a few here. I think that the ball's going to get spread around, but Jacoby Myers gets a bronze since he's been getting a full snap count with the Jaguars. He's had 7.3 targets per game, 4.8 receptions, 63 yards, and he's had 3 total touchdowns in that time span. He leads the team with 26% target share and 31% of the end zone targets. So he's had some scoring opportunities lately, and he's been doing a good job with it. Brian Thomas, I'm leaving on the bench. I think he's going to see the most of Patrick Surtain this week, just based on how the alignment works out. Brian Thomas is probably still the most physically talented receiver on the team compared to Myers, so they're going to go ahead and just shut him down and try and deal with Myers with the rest of the defense. Brenton Strange, I will also leave on the bench. He had just 3 targets last week and 45 or fewer yards in 3 of his last 4 games, so it's just not really that good of a look. Trevor Lawrence, I think he's just the sum of all the parts, even though there's not many good parts, kind of like a anti-Kirk Cousins situation going on here. Over on the Broncos side of the ball, Bo Nix, a bronze grade as well. He's coming off a very nice game, 302 yards and 4 passing touchdowns. But his 4 games prior to that, he had just 1 total passing touchdown and 1 rush touchdown. So it's been kind of tough sledding for him. He's been quarterback 3 in points per game in the last 3 weeks. So there's something there, and he's probably startable if you're in a pinch. The Jacksonville defense has the lowest EPA per dropback allowed in the last month, but that was against a very easy quarterback schedule in Brady Cook, Riley Leonard, Cam Ward, and Jacoby Brissett. So that's not really a ton to read into there, but they're still a good defense. RJ Harvey will get a bronze grade since the J.K. Dobbins injury, which is weeks 11 through 15. He's averaged 15 rushing attempts, 51 rushing yards, 3.5 targets, and 18 receiving yards per game with 4 rushing touchdowns to his name. He was a full practice this week, despite that rib injury we were worried about a little bit. But the Jacksonville run defense, they're pretty tough. Fewest rush yards allowed per game, 4th lowest rushing yards over expectation allowed, and then the 3rd lowest yards after contact per attempt allowed too. So they really, really shut it down on all fronts there. Cortland Sutton gets a bronze grade. He's got 10 targets in each of his last 2 games and 175 total receiving yards and a touchdown in those games. And last month, he leads the team in target share, air yard share, and end zone target share. So it's just, he's the wide receiver 1 on this team. Between Troy Franklin and Pat Bryant, we're just going to bench both of them. Bryant is back in practice, so I don't know how you can decide which one's going to have a better game on any given week. I don't think there's any discernible trends there, so I'm not going to trust either of them in the semifinals. And then Evan Engram, yeah, you're benching him. You can find someone better.
You don't want the Evan Engram revenge game?
Yeah.
I guess there's that, but frankly, no, I do not.
Wow. Just so quick to cast aside the Evan Engram revenge angle. He's so angry.
I think he has good tidings for the Jacksonville Jaguars program.
All right. Time for a quick break and a word from Maj about Game Blazers.
Another week at Game Blazers, another $36,000 in free roll cash prizes on the line. It's NFL Week 16, and whether your fantasy team is primed for the title or crashed and burned weeks ago, you can still build your ultimate fantasy team at Game Blazers and compete for cash prizes every week. Use referral code FFAD when you register, and you can get a free starter pack and a free rare pack, a combined value of $50. Once you onboard, you'll also get a spend 5 get 50 offer for 2 more rare packs. Learn more at GameBlazers.com.
Welcome back. The nearly inept Las Vegas Raiders offense heads to Houston to take on the best defense in the land this week. Can you start either of the 2 Raiders you'd think about starting? Well, let's start with Brock Bowers. It sounds like Geno Smith might go this weekend, which would be better for Bowers, I think. But it's still against a scary Texans defense. But the Texans faced another top tight end last week in Trey McBride. And as Trevor said, he burned them down. 12 catches, 135 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Now, Bowers, here's his schedule over the last month. He faced the Browns, Chargers, Broncos, Eagles, and now Texans. There's not a harder schedule of defenses that you can face. He's put up good numbers, double-digit PPR points in 3 of the last 4. And the one last week against Philly, that's the one he didn't get to double-digit PPR points. He had 8 targets last week. So I think Brock Bowers is still startable. I'll give him a silver grade. Ashton Genty is the other one. The problem is his volume is just drying up right now. 12 touches against Denver in week 14, only 38 combo yards. 13 touches last week in Philly, only 42 combo yards. And luckily, 4 of those touches were catches, which helped him limp to 8.2 PPR points. The Texans this week are at least as difficult as those prior 2 opponents. My guess is that very few fantasy teams with Genty are still in the playoffs. But if you are, I'm leaving Ashton Genty on the bench this week. The Texans have allowed the 3rd fewest combo yards in the league to opposing backs. And it's just not the time for Ashton Genty to shine this week. And I hope I'm wrong on that one too, because I have Ashton Genty and I might be forced to use him in a game this week. So, yikes.
Best of luck. Yeah.
I'm down to an Ashton Genty or Kamani Vidal or Tyjae Spears thing. And it's pretty rough right there. All right, on the Texan side, Jawar Jordan was my roll the dice runner. Nick Chubb is in play. If Woody Marks doesn't go, by the way, for many of the same reasons. And I will mention Marks got in a limited practice on that injured ankle on Friday. So if he goes, he'll get first crack at the good grade and he'd be a silver. If Marks doesn't go, both Jordan and Chubb would be bronze grades. CJ Stroud looks like he's back to the 2 years ago CJ Stroud that everyone loved so much. 260-3 last week against Arizona. But the big thing was he completed 22 of his 29 passes. So he only had 7 incompletions. And the Raiders defense is open for business. They allowed multiple scores to 3 of the last 5 quarterbacks they've faced. More notably, teams are completing every pass against the Raiders right now. Justin Herbert only had 5 incomplete passes. Nix only had 7 incomplete passes on 38 attempts. Jalen Hurts only threw 15 passes last week. He completed 12 of them, and 3 of those were touchdowns. So a silver grade for Stroud. Nico Collins, he gets a gold grade. Underrated aspect of the Texans' 6-game winning streak is how consistent Nico has been. 20 or more PPR points 4 times in those 6 games. The 2 others, he caught all 3 of his targets for 55 yards against the Bills and had 4 catches for 121 yards against the Chiefs. 19 different wide receivers have hit double-digit PPR points against the Raiders this year. So an easy gold for Collins. And Jaden Higgins, I'm giving a bronze grade to as well. His snap share was 72% last week. Nico had 1 more snap than Jaden Higgins. So the problem for Higgins, he only had 1 catch for 4 yards last week and only 3 catches for 34 the week before. But I'll take the opportunity. He's on the field a ton. His backfield is iffy at best right now with some injuries and Chubb not being very good and a practice squad player maybe starting. It's a must-win game for the Texans to keep pace in the playoff race. It's at home, it's indoors, and it's against a pass defense that's bottom 10 in receptions, yards, and touchdowns allowed to opposing wide receivers. So Higgins is a bronze. Don't play Dalton Schultz. The Raiders are actually good against tight ends, top 10 in every category. Don't play Dalton Schultz. All right. One of my favorite things of this week is the Yukon Cornelius game of the week.
Gold, gold and silver, silver and gold.
Wahoo, Trevor. It's the Steelers and Lions. This has got to be the highest scoring game of the week that I would think. You told us you like Aaron Rodgers. What about his receivers?
I'll give DK Metcalf a silver. As I mentioned with Rodgers earlier, the matchup's elite. Only one team's given up more wide receiver touchdowns than the Lions 20, and no defense has given up more yards to the position. DK leads the team with a 22.5% target share. Kind of a weird stat. He's got exactly 5 catches in each of his other 3 games against the NFC North, so maybe you just expect 5 catches on Sunday. Bench the rest of the receivers. We're not messing around there. Jalen Warren and Kenny Gainwell, I'm going to give the commercial bronze to both of them. Warren's been getting a majority of the touches slightly, but Gainwell has 13 catches over his past 2 games, and he actually out-carried Jalen Warren 13-12 last week. Jalen Warren did come into the game dealing with an illness, so that could explain some of the role change. It's a brutal matchup, too. Detroit's the second toughest matchup for running backs. They've not allowed a catch receiving touchdown to a running back all year, and they're top 10 in touches, yards, and total touchdowns given up to the position. But if both guys are in the mix for 12 to 13 touches, plus a high game total that keeps both of them in play, the tight ends, a Steelers tight end hasn't scored or had 4 catches in a game since November 23rd. Keep them on the bench. And then on the other side, we get to the Yukon Cornelius silvers and golds. Jared Goff starts with a silver. It's the highest total game on the slate, opened at 45.5. It's now up to 52. So people love the over. Detroit's had 4 home games since the bye. The the game totals in those are as follows: 51, 61, 55, and 74. Detroit's defense is fading, so Pittsburgh should be able to keep pace a little bit. You get a dome spot. The Steelers allow the most completions and the 4th most yards to quarterbacks. Jahmyr Gibbs, he's a beast. Play him. His last 2 home games, he has 6 touchdowns, nearly 23 touches a game. Pittsburgh's a good matchup. David Montgomery, I will give a commercial bronze to. He does have a touchdown in 3 straight, but 8 or less touches in 4 of 5. You're mostly betting on a score here. Pittsburgh's only allowed 6 running back touchdowns of any kind this season, so it's a way to kind of get access to this high-scoring game, but I'm not thrilled about it. Amon-Ra Jameson, I'm giving platinum and golds to. Dan Campbell took over the Lions' play calling in the Washington game in Week 10, in part because he was upset at how Jameson Williams was being used. Well, since then, JMO's been on a heater. He's got 4 touchdowns in those 6 games and at least 88 yards in 5 of the 6. The excellent matchup as well. Pittsburgh's allowed the 2nd most catches and 7th most yards to enemy receivers. Amon-Ra's right up there with Chase as the top. Jamar Chase is the top play of the week. Pittsburgh's tight end defense is horrible, but the top 2 tight ends on the Lions roster have 2 catches combined this season. So I'm not going to go there.
Yeah, probably not, but fire up those Lions for sure. All right, Kent, your final matchup of the week is a doozy. It's the Sunday nighter. The Ravens shut out Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase last week. Can they do the same to Drake May?
No, definitely not. But I do think that Drake May is in a good opportunity here. I just saw recently they announced that Kyle Hamilton was downgraded to questionable, and then Chidobe Awuzie is going to be doubtful for this game as well. So there's some injuries going on in the secondary for Baltimore right now. Drake May, I got a silver grade on him. I was considering bumping that up to the gold with this news, but I don't think I'm quite there. He's been reliable, but kind of consistently in that 20 to 24 point range. He's got 8 games with 20 plus fantasy points on the year, which is tied for second. And despite last week where he had 155 yards and no touchdowns and an interception, he did have 2 rushing touchdowns, which is good for that every once in a while. So he likes to use his legs quite a bit. He's really trustworthy against this Baltimore team. It should be a really fun game, but we're just going to leave him at a silver grade. Travion Henderson, I know you said you liked him earlier, but I'm going to only put a bronze grade on him this week. He was shot out of a cannon twice last game, 14 attempts for 184 yards and 2 touchdowns. But the touchdowns were 52 yards and 65 yards. Little back of the napkin math leaves 12 other attempts for 31 yards. So if he's not getting those explosive rushing plays, we're a little bit in the woods with him. The Baltimore Ravens allow the fewest explosive rushing plays in the last month. Just 1% of rushes go for more than 10 yards. So it's a little bit of a...
Trevor got the right answer in that question. Come on.
Well, I'm sticking to my guns here. And then Ramondre Stevenson, he's got a bench grade. He's taking the backseat to Henderson, just 6 attempts and 3 targets last game. So you're not really going to trust him there. Wide receivers, somehow I have to bench all 3 despite saying Drake May's a silver. Stephon Diggs, 4 few targets in the last 3 games. Kayshon Boutte, he had 1 target last game. He's a big play guy, but he has 0 volume to his name. It's just like, you trust him, or do you trust him to get a touchdown or not? And that's basically it. And then Matt Collins coming off 8 targets, but he's impossible to trust. I feel like we've seen this a few times with him. He always pulls a Kaiser Soze at the end, disappears into the wind like he was never there to begin with. So you can't trust any of these guys this week. Someone will have a good game. We just don't know who. And then Hunter Henry, weirdly enough, I'm also going to give a bench to. Only 1 tight end has gone for more than 50 yards against Baltimore all season long, and that's including when they were very injured earlier in the year too. They've allowed just 2 touchdowns to tight ends all season, so it's just not a good spot for him either. That's probably the biggest reason I wasn't able to get Drake May up to a gold, is I don't think any of the receivers or tight ends are in a very good spot here. Over on the Baltimore side of things, Lamar Jackson, man, something seems broken with him. Bronze grade. He went 8 for 12 for 150 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception last week against the Bengals. So that seems so much worse when you say it that way. It would be an okay stat line against a good defense, but the Bengals, he should be just trouncing them and was not able to get anything going. It was his first 2+ passing touchdown game since week 9 as well. And he's only had 1 game with 50 or more rushing yards all season. Last year, he had 9. So we're really just seeing a whole different ball game from Lamar this year. This Patriots defense in the last month hasn't allowed 200+ yards passing, and only Josh Allen threw for 2 or more touchdowns. So it's just not a good spot for Lamar Jackson. If you got him, you probably have to start him, but don't feel great about it. Derrick Henry, I got a bronze grade on him. He's starting to look his age, I think, a little bit more every single week, but he does have 3 straight games with 100 scrimmage yards, so it's hard to really be too mad about that. The New England Patriots have allowed the 3rd fewest fantasy points to running backs this season, but in the last month, it has been their highest stretch of yards per carry allowed all season, where they're allowing 5 yards per carry. So it's been a little bit lighter compared to previous weeks with them. And the only 2 times they've allowed 100+ yards to an opposing running back was in that time stretch too in the last 4 weeks. So it's an okay spot for Henry. You're probably starting him again, but you don't feel great about it. Zay Flowers, I'll give him a bronze. In his last 2 games, he's had 16 total targets, 11 receptions for 192 yards, 1 touchdown. It's all good stuff. He'll probably see quite a bit of Christian Gonzalez in coverage, though. Not necessarily a shadow, but it's just kind of a tough look to go against Gonzalez. He's one of the best cornerbacks out there right now. Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely, they're both dead to me, as I discussed earlier. They blew it last week against the Bengals. Likely had a goose egg, and just 2 weeks prior, they both had really good games against the Bengals. So, I'm kind of surprised that, they're so defeated this last week compared to weeks prior. But you can't trust either of them right now either. You got to find a better streaming option than them.
Yeah, that was maybe the most disappointing call I've had all year.
Absolutely. Yeah. It cost me a trip to the semifinals in Scott Fishbowl.
That's so sad.
Yep.
I'm sorry. If it was me that gave you that advice, I'm so sad. I hope you
it
came
was
up
not.
with it on your own.
As you know, I was quite
all.
busy last week. Yeah.
All right. Final matchup of the day is the Monday Nighter, and Brock Purdy is back. 295 and 3 last week with 44 rushing yards too. It looks like he's finally healthy. The Colts this week are an interesting matchup. They are allowing the third most passing yards in the league at 264 per game. They haven't allowed many passing touchdowns, though. They've only given up 2 passing touchdowns in the last 4 games. And the quarterbacks against were Mahomes, Stroud, Lawrence, and Darnold. Some pretty good quarterbacks in there. Silver grade here for Purdy on the yardage for sure. Let's see if he can toss a few in the end zone, though. And if he's going to do that, he's going to probably throw one to Juwan Jennings. He's been his favorite end zone target. In his last 6 games, 6 touchdowns, including 2 last week. I mentioned in Roll the Dice that 2 of the Colts starting corners are already out this week. That sets up nicely for Jennings, so a silver grade on him. And then we get to this part of the matchup.
I love gold.
There's so much gold happening here. Like George Kittle gets a gold grade like his helmet. Since week 10, he's got 5 games over 10 PPR points in only 5 games. He's got 3 of those games over 22 PPR points and 0 games under 10. Indy's allowing the 8th most receptions and 5th most yards to tight ends this year. Super nice day for George Kittle incoming. But the marquee matchup of this game, and I'm going to lump these two together in a rare occurrence on Fantasy Friday. I'm going to put Christian McCaffrey and Jonathan Taylor into the matchup together because it's basically the number 1 and number 2 running backs in the league. They're facing off against each other. They're obviously both in your starting lineups with gold grades.
That's gold, Jerry. Gold.
McCaffrey has the tougher of the 2 matchups. Worth noting, the Niners have allowed the 2nd most receptions in the league so far this year. So I think Jonathan Taylor might be in play for a big receiving game too. Or Amir Abdullah, who randomly had 5 receptions last week. If you're starting Phillip Rivers in 2025 in a playoff matchup, you're crazy, but I like you. But you're crazy. The matchup is decent. The Niners allow 236 yards and almost 2 touchdown passes per game. They've only picked off 5 passes all year, which bodes well for Rivers. But I'm not going to lie, it didn't look like Rivers could get the ball maybe more than 20 yards downfield last week, which is why Amir Abdullah was his top receiver with 5 receptions. I'm leaving Rivers on the bench. I'm barely extending starting grades to only 2 of his receivers. Tyler Warren is 1. He gets a bronze. Led the team in targets last week with 6. His matchup is the best amongst the receivers. The Niners have allowed the 5th most touchdowns to the tight end position this year. That includes a touchdown to Harold Fannin and a touchdown to Gunnar Helm in the last 2 weeks. Michael Pittman gets the other bronze grade, and I don't even really like it that much. He had 5 targets last week, 1 fewer than Warren. His matchup is pretty good against Diamador Lenore, who is definitely not a person I made up. And Lenore has allowed 5 touchdowns in his coverage this year. For what it's worth, I like Josh Downs from the slot much better than Alec Pierce, but I think I'm going to leave both of them on the bench. Downs did get the touchdown pass from Rivers last week, and the slot's definitely a better spot, but you definitely can't play Alec Pierce. If you needed to twist my arm into a Josh Downs bronze, I think I could maybe get there, but I don't really like it all that much. All right. Before we hit lightning round, I wanted to quickly go over a big Christmas Day contest that's coming up on our partner site, the National Fantasy Football Championship. And oh, look, it's Maj.
The National Fantasy Football and Basketball Championships have a huge holiday bonus on the line this Christmas Day. The NFL Christmas Day Bonanza has a $40K prize pool with $7,500 to first. And the NBA Christmas Day Jam has over $8,000 in prizes with $5K to first. Both contests are just $100 to enter. Sign up for the NFL Bonanza at playnffc.com/bonanza and the NBA Jam at playnfbkc.com/jam.
All right, to end the show, this is what we call lightning round. Oh, hey.
Speed. I am speed.
That's right. All right, if you'd like to be featured on lightning round, find my Twitter handle at Explosive Output. Each week I'll put up a lightning round thread. We'll pick a few and we'll answer them rapid fire. And remember, it's a decision between 2 players and 2 players only. If you include 3 players, we hang up and listen to you cry. All right, Kent and Trevor, are you guys ready for lightning round?
Yeah.
Get it.
All right, here we go. Trevor, Rashee Rice, if he goes, or Emeka Egbuka, and that's from our friend Woody Show.
Yeah, Woody, I'm going Rice if he plays. Egbuka has a top 11 PPR points since week 10, and like you said, all 3 of the pass catchers are healthy now.
All right. Kent, Ryan Schwartz wants to know either Kyle Pitts or Brock Bowers in guillotine.
Can't believe I'm saying this, but Kyle Pitts. Even with Drake back, I think it's a good opportunity for the Falcons and the Houston defense. You don't want to deal with that, and that's who Bowers has to go against.
All right. Trevor, Bucky Irving or Travion Henderson? That's for Mark Giannini.
Yeah, I'm going with Bucky. He gets a slight nod. He has a little bit better matchup than Travion Henderson does this week.
All right. Kent, can you help out Jerry Goldfarb here? Would you go with Deebo Samuel or DK Metcalf?
DK Metcalf, because I at least can hope that he gets a house call at some point. Deebo Samuel looks cooked, man. And with the Marcus Mariota offense, I'm not interested.
All right. Trevor, Daryl Hancock wants to know Tyler Shuck or Bryce Young?
Shout out to Daryl, by the way, for having both of these quarterbacks in his semifinal fantasy matchup. What a legend. I'll go Shuck against a middling Jets pass defense that Trevor Lawrence just lit up for a career day.
I think he went 0 quarterback for sure.
He must.
Trevor, I'm going to stay with you on this one because I got another Tyler Shuck one. EJB wants to know Shuck or JJ McCarthy?
I'm going to stick with Shuck here. No Devin Neal or Kamara should set up a pass-first approach. Although I do like McCarthy, too. I don't really think he could go wrong either way there.
Oh, interesting. I thought you were going to go McCarthy for sure. Wow.
Yeah,
right.
the Darisaw things makes me a little nervous.
Okay. Kent, let's hit you with a few quarterback ones, and I got a McCarthy one for you, too. Tim Matfield wants to know JJ McCarthy or Brock Purdy?
Brock Purdy, still no sauce for the Colts, who Purdy's going up against. And then JJ McCarthy, that's just scary downside in the semifinals, man. I think he's an okay streamer, but Purdy's a better quarterback.
Okay, well, I'm going to stick with you for a couple more, Kent, because
Sure.
now we got Brock Purdy versus Jacoby Brissett. That's for David Glenn.
Yeah, this one was tougher. I am going to stick with Purdy. Brissett has 3 straight games with an interception, and then Purdy seems to have gotten his interception issues under control. And I think Ricky Pearsall does play, so that seems to be an uplift for him as well.
Okay, Kent, I'm going to do one more because I got another Brissett in here. We got Josh Laurent, who does the fantasy football report card for us.
Oh, yeah.
He wants to know Jacoby Brissett or Dak Prescott, and this is a 5-point passing touchdown league.
Oh, I did not know that part. I don't think it really matters much. I will go with Jacoby Brissett here. It's a tough matchup for Dak going against the Los Angeles Chargers defense. It's been very stout against the passing. And then Brissett has higher upside, arguably, with Marvin Harrison Jr. back in the game.
All right. Trevor, James Cook or Saquon in guillotine? And this is for Aaron Johnson.
Yeah, I'll go James Cook. I like the 10-point favorite home spot over Cleveland better than Saquon against Washington.
They're on the road, Trevor. Come on.
Oh, sorry. I still like Cook better.
They're on the same lake, but they're on the road.
That's true. That's true.
Weird that they're on the same lake. All right, Kent, Quinshon Judkins or Omarion Hampton, and this is for Jason Hansen.
Yeah, this was a little scarier with the split with Vidal and Hampton, but I will go with Omarion Hampton here. Judkins has really struggled to get it going, low yardage numbers the last couple weeks, and defense, they've been better lately, but still somewhat exploitable at least. Hampton has been better than Vidal despite the split, so I think he gets going a little bit more.
All right, and Trevor, this is the last one of Lightning Round, and there's a little story behind this one. This is for Joe Thompson, who is playing his wife Tina in his fantasy semifinals this week. So this is the most important question you may ever hear on Lightning Round. He's got to beat his wife in fantasy. In the flex, I did mention in fantasy.
You did. Yep.
In the flex, in a PPR league, is it Quinshon Judkins or is it Terry McLaurin?
Yeah, this is for sure the most pressure I'll ever have on a lightning round question. Hopefully we'll get you there, man. I'll go with Quinshon Judkins against the Bills run defense that's allowed a league worst 18 rushing touchdowns.
All right, there we go. That was lightning round. You guys did so well. I'm so proud of you.
Thanks, Dad.
Follow our leader. Yep.
All right. Trevor, Kent, anything that you guys got coming up in the next weekend? Anything fun going on?
Just grinding through the end of football season, man.
Got hockey for the kid and some Santa pictures, I think, too.
Ooh. Is Santa going to be at the hockey rink?
Yeah, he's actually our forward. Yeah, he's on the team. No.
Pretty good.
Different outings, yeah.
There we go. All right. Make sure to follow Trevor and Kent on Twitter. It's not an easy task to get this show going, and they deserve a follow. At TJones5 for Trevor, at Kent Weyrauch, and I spelled it out for you before, but you can probably find him if you just at Kent WE, and then you'll figure it out. It'll figure it out.
You were halfway there, man.
I know. Thanks for tuning in to Fantasy Friday on Fantasy Football Almost Daily. Next week, we're going to do a split episode. So we're going to have two different episodes that are kind of Fantasy Friday because we got Thursday and Christmas Day matchups and all sorts of fun stuff. So make sure you tune into both episodes next week. And really good luck to everybody in your fantasy semifinals this week. We hope that you win and bring home the title. All right. Thanks, guys. We'll see you next week on Fantasy Football Almost Daily.
This was Fantasy Football Almost Daily. Please subscribe and give us a 5-star rating wherever you listen to podcasts.